Let's get a bit of business news now, and joining us, as always on a Tuesday, is the best economics editor in the business. He's at the Australian, Adam Creighton. Adam, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So the coronavirus is spreading its tentacles. If you thought that it might well be contained, well, we've seen overnight that it's spread towards Italy. It's in Iran now, and it's affecting the global markets in a big way. What are your thoughts on that, first of all?
Well, look, certainly, firstly, financial markets are basically catching up with the grim reality of the disease. I think we're going to see back-to-back falls in Australia today, maybe 5% down over the 2 days. But I think for the economy, the bigger issue here is that we could actually be facing a recession in Australia, I think. I mean, it's pretty clear that the damage to the economy is going to be far greater than the 0.2 percentage points of GDP that the Reserve Bank expected a couple of months ago. The disease is causing far more damage. I mean, certainly in per capita terms, I think it's almost certain that we're in the midst of a recession right now in Australia. It's just a matter of how great it will be.
Josh Frydenberg seems eternally optimistic, saying
once
this outbreak does fade, which there are no signs of it fading, it just seems to be getting worse and spreading farther afield, that those sectors affected by it will bounce back. Well, we're not seeing that yet.
Yeah, certainly that's true. I mean, with the SARS virus in 2002, there was a sharp bounce back, but it's starting to reach the point now where this virus is infecting far more people and is more contagious. I mean, I think it's still true that it's not as lethal, though. I think that's one silver lining. And just broadly on the economy, it's driven down the Australian dollar quite a bit. I think it's fallen below 66 cents, which is about a 12-year low. That will actually help boost government tax receipts for companies with foreign earnings. So it's not all bad news for the government. Also, it's worth pointing out the iron ore price has not actually tanked yet. It's still held up quite well. I think it's about $87 this morning. Well,
you just mentioned SARS, Adam, and at the time, Qantas and Alan Joyce mentioned in an interview a couple of weeks ago that it took Qantas about 8 months to recover, which is a big hit for that company. Would you suspect that it could be that this time around? I mean, Qantas is probably in the fortunate position of being, was in a pretty good financial shape.
Yeah, look, certainly Qantas, I think, has seemed fairly confident. I think their China-related flights are about 15% of their earnings or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I mean, I think the biggest economic damage is certainly going to be to the university sector in Australia. They've really hitched their bandwagon to the flow of Chinese students. I mean, to the point that, you know, some of their degrees are actually 40% made up of Chinese students. So their revenue is very heavily dependent. It's been choked off. The question is how they deal with that enormous slump in revenue. I certainly hope the government doesn't bail them out. I think there's an enormous amount of fat in the university sector that could be cut.
Adam, you've uttered the R word this morning.
Yeah.
Recession in the works. Let's get serious. Do you think it is likely to happen this year?
Well, look, the first quarter of this year, I think, will be negative. You know, that's in aggregate terms. Whether the second quarter is negative too, that's an open question. But like I said, if you adjust it for population growth, which of course remains enormous in Australia, still the fastest population growth in the Western world, then I think it's almost certain that we're in a per capita recession. Now, of course, the government always hates talking about things in per capita terms because the stats don't look so good. But I think that's the reality we're in.
Have you got a time frame, Adam? I mean, are we talking months away from here, or possibly even towards next year?
Well, look, the technical definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of growth. So if we have a negative quarter in the first quarter, then that's one. I mean, as I say, I don't know what's going to happen in June, but it seems like if this virus continues to hammer the tourism and the education sectors, then it's certainly a 50-50 probability that we'll have 2. But, you know, working against that, like I said, is this extremely rapid population growth, which just always tends to keep the economy growing in aggregate terms.
Perversely, there are 2 bright spots for the budget, one being foreign company tax receipts because of the lower dollar, as you just mentioned, but also the iron ore price still pretty high. I think in the budget it was forecast to be around the $50 a tonne mark. It's up near the $90 a tonne. So could the silver lining be that the budget is still semi-okay? Yeah, look, I mean, I've been fairly bullish about the budget for the past few months. I'm still not writing off a surplus this financial year for those reasons. You know, we've got a lower dollar, which obviously boosts company tax receipts from overseas for the government, and both coal and iron ore prices have been fairly high still. And you know, those 3 factors, I think, overwhelmingly are the biggest impact
kind of on the bottom line, and also the jobs market. You know, sure, we saw an uptick to 5.3% recently in the jobless rate, but jobs growth has still been relatively strong, and the share of the population on welfare is still relatively low. So I think all those factors combined, I think, you know, still give a government, I think, more than even chance of getting a surplus this financial year.
Okay, Adam Creighton, appreciate your time as always, and appreciate your insight. Well done. Talk to you soon.